Hello, twisted humans.
Do you find yourself wanting to know more about the latest murder, conspiracy, cult, or haunting?
Then this is the podcast for you. I'm Alecia.
And I'm Sierra, and this is
Twisted and Uncorked. Alright, lay it on me.
Hang on, sorry, I'm in the wrong thing.
You should be sorry. It's unacceptable.
Oh, I lied.
Joking.
I did find
I love
one
you.
that was not about the ocean. This one is related to drinking, so that's fun.
Oh!
Apparently, the urine of a diabetic person contains so much sugar that it could be purified and made into whiskey.
What?
Who is going to test that theory? Because I don't think I can do it.
Where? I think the same people that are testing out human salami.
That's true, yeah.
What?
Yeah, I mean, they got lots of sugar in there. I mean, it does say purify it, so, you know, it's not like pee. It's not dirty, but it's still pee, though. Like, it's still pee. Like, yeah.
It's still pee.
Yeah, it's still pee.
It's definitely still pee. Mm-hmm. What the hell? Oh. Well, on a less sustainable note. Well, actually, if we're not on the same sustainable note, female cockroaches have the ability to reproduce on their own. But of course, it's all females, because that's all that they have in there.
So females
Body is
can only
female.
produce females?
Females. So who
Wow.
run the world? Female cockroaches.
Yeah.
Who run the world? But that's kind of what makes them so sustainable and, like, kind of indestructible, because if they go months without finding a male, they'll be like, I can just do this myself.
Yeah, and then they'll just make more girls who will go months without finding a male and then make more of them.
And
you know?
thus make more girls. Isn't that scary?
I mean, it's
Dislike.
It's a pretty...
Makes me dislike cockroaches more than I already did.
I
And
feel
if
like
anybody
it's
has not been listening since the beginning, you could rob Sierra with a cockroach.
Seriously. Only, like, the really, like, gross, you know, like, house ones, though.
So if anybody ever needs to rob Sierra, bring a cockroach.
You gotta bring, like, a cockroach that you find on the ground,
and a cup full of diabetic urine.
You can't get fancy with the cockroaches, though, because I used to volunteer at a museum where they had pet Madagascar hissing cockroaches, and I'm cool with those.
Why?
Like,
Why?
It was in the, like, children's science area, and we used to have to take them out and let them crawl on us so that the kids could see them. And
Sorry.
But those ones are, like, big and, like, you know, they're not disgusting.
Nothing
to
is
me.
crawling on me. Nothing.
If it's, like, in a house or outside, that's fucking gross. American cockroaches are fucking gross.
I'd light myself on fire before I'd let a cockroach crawl on my arm.
It was for the kids.
I know, the things you do for the children. I'm just, like, so squirmy with bugs in general.
Yeah, it took
I don't
a while
think
for
I've
me
been
to get used to
recording
it.
with you when the alien beetles have come into play. I think I told you a story
I'm
about
sorry,
how I was
the
in
what?
my lamp after the alien beetles. After you and I recorded, those, like, flat beetles that I don't know how they get in my house. And after you and I recorded one day, it was in my lamp. It scared the shit out of me.
Hope you guys
So,
aren't, like,
maybe
itching and crawling
Eating.
with creepy feelings now. Sorry about that. This is Twisted and Uncorked.
where
We're just here to make
real
you
twisted,
uncomfortable.
and yeah, exactly. You guys are all twisted humans too, and you like it. Well, female cockroaches are out there taking over the world. We will be continuing our nice straw.
Oh, yeah.
Looks so fancy.
I was going to
in
say
your
earlier,
cup.
speaking of eating, I've got my fancy little, it's not a sangria this week. It's a margarita made with Chardonnay. So we still used our
So it's
cupcake
technically
Chardonnay.
a sangria, but technically,
Yeah.
yeah, we've got a little bit.
It's frozen and blended. I have a salted rim, and I have fruits inside.
Delish.
Delish.
So good. It literally tastes exactly like a margarita, but there's no tequila to be found.
It's perfect. And check out our Instagram for the recipe. Or TikTok, or wherever you...
Any of our other social media platforms that you should be following all of.
Yeah. Wherever you social, you can find it.
And I'm so excited for Sierra's conspiracy case this week. She has been hinting at it.
It's going to be a long one.
I'm ready.
I'm going to try to keep this to one episode, but there's a possibility I'm going to have to put some on the end.
Two, guys.
Yeah.
Might be two.
Like I said in our little hint about this, if you're on Patreon or Instagram, you should know. Alicia's case last week had one body. My case has many, many, many bodies. so many fucking
Also
bodies.
nightmare fuel.
Okay. So, before I tell you the actual conspiracy part of the story I'm covering, I'm going to start by just telling you a lot about the specific case that I will focus most of this episode on. After I'm finished with the information about this specific case, I'll tell you what the conspiracy is and give you a little more coincidence to show why so many people believe this conspiracy theory. Because, too many coincidences. So the 8,000 mini-page book I read is called The Boys on the Tracks.
Mini page.
So technically this is a huge mystery. It is unsolved. But the conspiracy, as crazy as it is the only thing in my mind that makes sense. So that's why I wanted to cover this case. I've been thinking about this case since the first time I heard it forever ago, and I can't get it out of my mind. The conspiracy is insane. I'm gonna sound like a crazy person once again. But, I don't know.
No.
Maybe I'll convince you. On Saturday, August 22nd, 1987, Kevin Ives, who was 17, asked his mother if he could stay over at his recent friend Don Henry, 16's house. Kevin's mom was reluctant because she didn't like this friend much. Kevin used to hang out with other kids and was always home on time, always did good in school, always had his priorities in order. But Don was a bit of a bad influence on Kevin. So Don lived with his dad and his dad's young wife, and Don's dad was more like his friend, kind of. Don wasn't a bad kid by any means. He just had a lot more freedom than Kevin's mom was used to giving Kevin. Once in the recent past, Kevin was supposed to be staying at Don's and ended up staying the night at a completely different person's home with Don. And when Kevin's mom couldn't find him, she was furious, but he did come home, explain the situation, and she started feeling a little better. On this night specifically, though, August 22nd, 1987, against her better judgment, Kevin's mom allowed Kevin to stay the night at Don's home. The Sunday morning after, when Don's father called Kevin's mother and asked her if the boys were at her house, she felt furious again. But she was hopeful that it was just another mix-up and that he'd walk in the door at any moment. Little did she know, at the time, her son Kevin Ives and his friend Don Henry were currently having pieces of their bodies bagged up only about a mile away from Don's home at the train tracks where a crime scene was being investigated.
Two things. I really want to read this book. And that is horrifying. Mm-hmm. Poor guys.
I know. The night that Kevin had stayed with Don, they decided to go spotlight hunting a little after 1 a.m. Don asked his father if that would be okay, and he approved. It wasn't hunting season, and what they were doing was technically illegal, but that doesn't mean they deserved what was going to happen next. What happened to them between the time they left Don's home to go hunting and 4 a.m. is unknown, but at about 4 a.m., a train crew of 3 men from the Union Pacific locomotive spotted something dark on the tracks where their train was on. This wasn't the first time they'd seen something on the train tracks. Usually it's a bush or an overgrown plant. They intended to brace themselves for the impact of hitting this plant. They kept their eyes on it and then realized, all at the same time, just 5 seconds before impact, 100 feet away, that it was not a plant, but it was 2 small boys, laying completely still, their heads up against one side of the rail, their legs hanging over the other side of the rail. They were side by side, their arms straight down next to them, like soldiers at attention, they later said. One wore a blue shirt, the other was shirtless. A small, pale green tarp, about the size that covered a small boat, was laying over the boys, covering them from their waists to their knees. But the train crew could see it blowing up. They could see everything, including the shiny rifle that laid parallel next to them. As soon as they realized what they were seeing, they engaged the brakes and sounded the whistle, but it was too late. The boys did not move an inch. The train was going over Kevin Ives and Don Henry. The train crew called for help as soon as the train came to a stop, and while they waited, they investigated the scene themselves. They saw the tarp, which had flown off the boys. They saw the boys' bodies ripped to shreds. But what they didn't see was blood. The largest body part that was still intact was the torso of the shirtless boy, which was Don. But there was little to no blood seeping out from the many open wounds in his torso where his lower half, arms, and head used to be. How had this horrific incident just happened and not spilled blood everywhere?
I have a serious aversion to trains, too, just so you know.
Really?
I get a rational fear of them. And this is like nightmare fuel for me.
You still don't know
Maybe that's why I've never looked into it, because it involved trains.
Yeah. That's so crazy. I feel like, I'm partially glad you don't know this case because I can tell it to you.
I get that, because I get really excited when I tell you my case and you don't clue in right away as to what it is or all the details. It's exciting.
The ambulance arrived first and made note of the strange scene. One EMT in particular ensured that every detail of the scene he had arrived on was laid out in his report. When the police arrived at about 4:40 a.m., it seemed that they weren't much interested. They talked to the train crew and took statements. The crew took the police to the tarp, which the police did not collect as evidence, and the crew told the police how the boys were so still, as if maybe they were already dead. But the train crew felt that the police already had their minds made up. They called the scene a traffic accident. The body parts were placed in bags, which were actually reported to have been stepped on by the police officers. And not all of the evidence was collected.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was bad. The investigation ended rather quickly. So quickly, in fact, that the police allowed for another train going in the opposite direction from a turnoff to pass over the scene before it was even all the way cleaned up. Normally, traffic accidents don't call for having the bodies of the victims sent off for an autopsy, and at first, the officer in charge of the scene said it wouldn't be necessary. He had ordered the bodies to be sent directly to the funeral home. But he had changed his mind within a couple of hours and thought it might be best to send these ones for an autopsy, just in case there were any questions. And so the bodies were sent to the state medical examiner, Dr. Fahmy Malik. As the morning continued on, Don's father was driving around town trying to find his son and friend who never returned from their hunting trip. And rumors began going around town about the accident that was being investigated at the tracks. Don's father heard about these rumors and heard that it was his son on the tracks. Kevin's mother had to learn about the horrific incident from Don's father, and her life was forever changed. Immediately, she wanted to know why they were there and why this would have happened. When police finally confirmed to the parents that it was their children, they were told it was probably a suicide, since there was a small amount of marijuana found in Kevin's pants pocket. Neither parents believed it. They wanted the results of the autopsy, and when it was finished, they went straight to the source. But it wasn't finished right away. In the meantime, Don's family and friends were interested in helping him get some answers, and they went out to the scene of the incident so that the parents didn't have to. The first thing a friend noticed was there was no blood. Not even a little, like just none. No blood. The tarp that the police claim later to have never seen was gone, but a foot of one of the boys was still there. as well as a large piece of cardboard, large enough to have put the bodies of the two boys on to be dragged from somewhere else to the tracks. Kevin's father kept the piece of cardboard so that it could be examined for evidence, hopefully by the medical examiner, because he was feeling doubtful that the police had the sense to do much.
Like, I'm sorry, nobody gets hit by a train and does not explode. Like, and I don't even mean that to be
Right.
disgusting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
or
Blood
crude in any way,
everywhere.
but the fact that there's no blood anywhere, like...
Yeah. And on top of there not being blood
poor
anywhere,
kids.
they said that those boys didn't move an inch. Like, even if you were committing suicide, you would totally flinch if a train was coming at you.
You would
For sure.
flinch, or yeah. You'd close your eyes, you'd do something. Odd.
When the two families went to see Dr. Malik, the cardboard was given to the crime lab, but it was never seen again. Dr. Malik handed copies of his official ruling after the autopsy. It read, quote, "At 4:25 a.m., pause, interjection. Already he's saying 4:25, the train came at 4. Okay, back. At 4:25 a.m. on August 23rd, 1987, Larry Kevin Ives, 17, and Don George Henry, 16, were unconscious and in a deep sleep on the railroad tracks under the psychedelic influence of THC, parentheses marijuana, when a train passed over them, causing their accidental deaths." End quote. This is gonna get me real hyped up, like the Cecil Hotel episodes that we did. Their accidental deaths. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. They were under THC intoxication, he said. The psychedelic influence. I'm sorry. Since when does THC
Has this
a
man ever
psychedelic
smoked weed in his life?
No,
Yeah.
no, he has fucking not. But he probably also knew that neither have the parents. Kevin's mother was a pusher, though. Kevin's mother pressed for more and more information. Dr. Malik said their THC levels were very, very high. She said, how high? He said marijuana intoxication occurs at 5. And the boys' levels were...
Marijuana intoxication.
Occurs at 5. 5. It occurs at 5. And the boys' levels were 100. She said, 100 what? He said, units.
The fuck does that mean? Milligrams?
Units.
Ounce? Like what?
100 units of marijuana.
As THC intoxication.
Yeah. As she continued to ask questions, thinking this man to be completely incompetent, he threatened to show the family the autopsy photos. Like, I'm sorry, you don't believe me? Let me show you a picture of your dead son. No one wants to see their children that way. So Kevin's mother eventually backed down. After the meeting with Dr. Malik, Kevin's mother continued to press for more information from other sources. She continued to search for real answers in her son's death, and she continued to investigate this herself. The police said they were content with Dr. Malik's report, and this case was officially closed as an accidental death. But it just continues to get weirder and weirder. Kevin's mom went to the hospital to talk to that EMT who had claimed he detailed this report, 5 pages or so. 5 pages. 5 hours it took him to write his report, he said, at the scene. But she couldn't find it filed with police records or anything.
About marijuana intoxication?
Well, this was from the EMT, not from the hospital. So this guy was writing like, I don't see any fucking blood.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a little more consistent with what's actually happened.
Oh yeah. He was very upset and confused about the scene and did not think it was going to be a traffic accident. So he really detailed this case. But now that this case was closed, Kevin's mom had the police records. She actually got them. This
And
report
none of that was actually
not
included.
in it. So she went to the
convenient.
hospital to talk to the guy, and the man said to her, as police were all around, he can't talk to her about it, but she needs to keep looking. And when she finds it, she'll know it was his because he referred to the boys as the large boy and the small boy. This happened in 87.
Okay.
The large boy and the small boy report has still never been found.
Interesting.
Yeah. But a second EMT's report was found. It was not as detailed, but it did list that there appeared to be a lack of oxygen in the blood. And that was enough to convince Kevin's mom that something was totally off about the whole thing. She had the boys' bodies exhumed and had a second autopsy done. Again, the same results came back. Someone said, "Oh yeah, Dr. Malik was right. It is THC intoxication." And so she sent for a third autopsy. She also hired a private investigator and a lawyer to go to court for a change in the ruling of the manner of death. This whole court case was a shit show. And without doing a two-parter on this, I don't think we'll have to, I don't have time to explain it all, so I'm just going to give you the rundown. Both of the boys were thought to have been beaten before being placed on the tracks, according to this third autopsy. Kevin had a bruise on his face that seemed to have come from the butt of a gun, and Don was stabbed in the back. How did Dr. Malik not see this? I don't fucking know. When the boys were laid down, Don was already dead, and Kevin was unconscious from being beaten.
Poor boys.
Sorry, I said that wrong, but that's fine.
Good.
Before the train came, Kevin would have also succumbed to his injuries and had been dead. That's why there was no blood splatter from either of the boys. Awful.
Okay. I don't like it.
I don't like why it's been covered up this much so far. The court case brought about a lot of information about drug activity in the town and in neighboring towns. Many people were arrested for dealing throughout the trials. So, these were, witnesses, witness testimony, people who were subpoenaed to come and give information about anything that they know that might be related. And as they were giving out information, they were, ratting on themselves or ratting on their friends, and other people would get arrested for drug dealing, even if it didn't have anything to do with this case. Anything that came out during the case was also punishable. So there were many people arrested. Eventually, even the lawyer that Kevin's mom hired was arrested on drug charges. So a lot of people think that it's possible he was involved with the whole thing, whatever the whole thing was, and actually took the case to save his own ass. There was also a number of people who were killed or turned up dead in relation to this case throughout the time the trial was going on. This is where it gets crazy. Here come the bodies.
I don't like it. You started with a train accident.
Yeah, it gets crazy.
It's poor boys.
I know. Keith Coney was a friend of Don's who claimed he was with the boys the night that they were killed. He said that 2 policemen were talking to all 3 of the boys that night, and he left and the boys were still there with the policemen. He told his parents and some friends that the policemen might have something to do with it. In May of 1988, he allegedly lost control of his motorcycle and died when he crashed it into the back of a semi-truck. Some sources say that his throat was cut when he died, but because of this being a traffic accident, there was no official autopsy, so that can't be officially confirmed. In November of 1988, Keith McCaskill was murdered in his home, stabbed over 100 times. He was a manager and bouncer at a popular nightclub.
Sorry, are both their names Keith?
Yes, Keith Coney and Keith McCaskill.
Okay, I'm like, wait, what? He's gotten hit by a semi and he's been stabbed 100 times.
Keith Coney was a teenager around the same age as Donna and Kevin. Keith McCaskill was in his 40s.
Okay.
He was a manager.
Different spectrum.
Yes, he was a manager and bouncer at a popular nightclub where many people talked, and he had promised to give any information he heard to Kevin's mother and their attorney. On the night he was murdered, his neighbor across the street said he was a witness, and the police arrested him for the murder. He was a 19-year-old kid while Keith was 40-something and 205 pounds, who also is used to breaking up bar fights. And no one believed that this kid could have overtaken Keith McCaskill with a knife 100 times. And Keith McCaskill had a bunch of defensive wounds.
Which, yeah, he
This
fought
kid
back.
didn't
and
have any
to
wounds.
stab somebody 100 times takes a huge amount of exertion and determination.
Also, more than one knife was used, too.
I don't like
Yeah,
that.
so the police were like, nope, this guy did it. He's action too sketchy. He was charged and convicted, even though repeatedly he told the police that there were men who all dressed nice that came into Keith's home and made him watch the killing and told him that if he talked, they'd hurt his family as well. This kid was not given a fair trial. The judge trying the case refused to allow in witness testimony from multiple of Keith's friends, saying that Keith had been talking for weeks about how he knew his life was in danger, and he even arranged and paid for his own funeral 2 weeks before he died. Because of that, eventually the conviction was overturned, but no one else has ever been arrested.
What the Can you imagine having the wherewithal to pay for your own funeral? Like, what?
Yeah, he told his friends,
That's
like,
terrifying.
He told
like,
his friends,
this is going to happen. Oh,
I've been, looking into this case. I've been hearing people talk. I think I have too much information. If something happens to me, here's my money for the funeral. Here's this. Everything is lined up. I just know it's going to happen.
Oh my God. Well, if something ever happens to me, Sierra, I'm one of the many victims of women going missing in my area. Or we know too much and somebody's out to get us.
Oh, yeah, after today. After today, someone is totally out to get us.
A little freaked out. I know.
Seriously.
As soon as you get into conspiracies, you added this category to our mix. You did this to us.
Because I feel like people need to know. Like,
they do. They so do.
But also,
head on a swivel, baby.
Be worried.
All the time.
Yeah, okay.
Head on a swivel.
Now we're at what? Is that 4 bodies?
That's 4 bodies.
4 bodies. All right. On to number 5. Today's episode is presented by The Skin Store. For over 20 years, The Skin Store has been the #1 destination for premium skincare, hair care, and beauty products. With over 8,000 different products from 300 different brands, The Skin Store has you covered for all your hair, cosmetics, supplements, and of course, skincare needs. Find your favorite brands like Elta MD, NuFace, Olaplex, and more all in one place with gifts with every purchase. Right now, The Skin Store is offering our listeners 20% off your next purchase by using the code POD. That's POD, P-O-D, for 20% off your next purchase at skinstore.com/pod.list. Skin Store. Have the confidence to tackle the day ahead. In January of 1989, Gregory Collins, who was 24, was shot with a shotgun 3 times at close range, once in the face. The murder was thought to be drug-related, but it was never solved. He was supposed to appear in court to give a statement regarding Kevin and Dawn's murders. In March of 1989, Daniel Booney Bearden, who was friends with both the kid who died in the motorcycle accident and the kid who was shot in the face, disappeared after being subpoenaed, again for this trial.
Oh, no.
An anonymous caller said that he was murdered, but his body was never found. In April of 1989, Jeff Rhodes went missing. He had allegedly told his family just before that he knew too much about Kevin and Dawn's murders and about Keith McCaskill's murder, the 40-year-old. He was also allegedly a big part of the drug world in the area. When he couldn't be contacted to appear in court, he was reported missing, and then a couple weeks later, he was found shot in the head with his dead body set on fire in a dumpster. 26-year-old Frank Pilcher was arrested and charged for this murder, but witnesses said that he was actually hired to do the killing. Witnesses such as his girlfriend who lived with him.
This is insane.
It just keeps going.
Like,
and there's no information about any of this. Like, what I'm giving you is what there is.
People,
that's it.
people are dying, and
In
it's
this
because they know
teeny tiny
something or
Arkansas
trying to over a mysterious death of 2 young boys. Like, what is being hidden here?
Yeah. In June of 1990, Jordan Kettleson, who was a known drug dealer and rumored to have possible connections to Keith McCaskill's stabbing, was found dead in his truck. He suffered a blast from a shotgun. His death was reported as a suicide, and his body was cremated almost immediately. Which, I mean, when I was thinking about that one, I was like, okay, if he was like maybe hired or whatever to kill Keith McCaskill, maybe he did commit suicide. But also, this is the weirdest thing I've ever asked Jesse before. I said, can you kill yourself with a shotgun in a car? And he was like, I'm sorry, what? And I was like, I just don't know if it's possible for this person to hold a shotgun like this long, still be able to pull the trigger.
I don't think so, because
car.
then you look at like the Kurt Cobain case, and it's like even like
right, like
at standing
it's
range,
insane.
Like, I don't think it's possible to
mean,
shoot yourself like that.
Yeah, I don't know. Jesse's like, well, was it a sawed-off
the time
shotgun?
that this was?
Did he have a big truck? I'm like, they don't give us any information.
I don't know how much leg room he had.
Right.
I just know what happened. That's so scary.
Yeah. Even after finally getting Kevin and Don's accidental death case reversed and ruled as a probable homicide, and even with all of the drug-related information that was brought up by the grand jury trial, the case to this day remains unsolved. The prevailing theory in the minds of the parents is that the boys witnessed cocaine or other drugs being dropped from a small plane in the area and then picked up by drug traffickers. They were seen by the drug traffickers because of their flashlights that they were using to spotlight hunt. They believe that many people of higher authority, including police, attorneys, congressmen, and possibly even judges, were involved in the trafficking of these drugs, and that's why it was covered up so easily. The police will say that their theory is that the boys were involved in the actual trafficking of the drugs, or that they tried to steal the drugs from the drug traffickers, who have no connection to people of importance, and that's what caused the end to their lives. But there's still technically no way of knowing who exactly did this. The conspiracy surrounding the case is that one of the people who were involved with hiring the drug traffickers and covering up the crime of drug trafficking by ordering hits on this many people is none other than the governor of Arkansas at the time and later the president of the United States, Bill Clinton.
Because he's not involved in any conspiracies ever, anywhere, right? Fucking Bill Clinton.
The reason that the conspiracy of Bill Clinton being involved is so widely believed is because of the coincidental relationship that Clinton has with Dr. Fahmy Malek, the state examiner who did the first autopsy. I didn't get too much into it before when I was telling the whole story there. By the way, like I said, there's 8,000 pages, mini pages. They're mini pages. Technically, there's 240 actual pages of the book, but it's called The Boys on the Tracks. It's all about their case, and this episode is not all about their case. This episode is all about the conspiracy against Bill Clinton.
Is that largely what this book is based off of, too?
No. This book is about, like, it goes into everything. Bill Clinton is in it a lot. But it's mostly about the trial. And in the trial, you know, people go to jail for drug charges. People get killed. All this random stuff gets brought up. But it's all Kevin's mom's story about what she went through.
Gotcha.
So
still really interesting, though.
Yeah. So
very cool to read.
Oh yeah, it is. It is a really good book. You should definitely read it, all of you. But for the sake of time and the conspiracy of this episode, I had to leave a little bit out. But with all that said, Kevin's mother did have to jump through hoops to get a second autopsy. Like, she had to write letters to the sheriff. She wrote letters to the press. She wrote letters to the governor, Bill Clinton. She literally had to bring the press with her to Dr. Malik's office and ask him questions in front of them just to get people actually talking about the autopsy and questioning it, because it was like hidden. Nobody knew that this autopsy was a big joke. It was only after that, when the press quoted Dr. Malik in the paper, that the attorney finally reached out to her and said he wanted to help. She had to see Dr. Malik stand by his initial autopsy multiple times in court and in the press. She and a few other parents actually joined together and created a group that they called Victims of Malik's Incredible Testimony. I just said testimony. Let me fix that. Victims of Malik's Incredible Testimony, or VOMIT for short. VOMIT. Vomit. I love it. I love it so much.
As soon as I was like, no.
I mean,
That's
he makes
not
them
gonna
want to
be the-
vomit.
Oh, come on. What
So,
kind of acronym is that?
Dr. Fahmy Malik. Yeah. Dr. Fahmy Malik was hired as the state medical
go down.
examiner
You might
in
as well
May
go
of
down with vomit.
1979 with the approval of Governor Clinton. Legally, Malik was supposed to be hired by the Medical Examiners Commission, but somehow that legality was just looked over and no one seemed to notice or care. He actually wasn't even licensed until like 3 years later, so that's fun. When this was brought up in the future, the ruling from the Attorney General was that even though he wasn't hired the legal way, they all thought it was the legal way at the time, so they weren't going to go back and make changes to it now. As Dr. Malik became more present in the press, more information about him came out. There was a case that he did an autopsy for where he ruled that a rifle gun shot to a young man was suicide. But later, witnesses in the case said that the boy was cleaning his gun when the rifle went off. It wasn't a suicide. Which I feel like would be important if the person had life insurance, because you don't get the life insurance if they commit suicide. So I assume it was something of that sort.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Well, I don't know if it's for all cases, but in a lot of them, yeah, there's a clause where if they commit suicide, you don't get money for them, especially in the military. Also, if you don't wear your seatbelt in the military, you don't get life insurance if they weren't wearing their seatbelt, because that's committing suicide to the military. How insane.
Yeah. And how many conspiracies could we unwrap in the military?
Oh, gosh. Don't get me started. Let me finish this one first. In another incident where he did an autopsy, he originally ruled the hanging by a belt of a man in a psychiatric hospital as a suicide. But then, when the wife of this man tried to sue the hospital for negligence, Dr. Malik changed his ruling from suicide to accident, saying that the hanging was actually autoerotic self-asphyxiation that happened while the man was masturbating. It was an accident. Like, why? Why? Another time, the death of a young man after a fight was looked into by Dr. Malik. Some witnesses said that the man was killed on purpose by a blow from another person. Others said he didn't die until he accidentally fell off of the bed of a truck after the fight was over. At first, Malik ruled it undetermined, but later he changed it to homicide. During his court appearance for this case, he lied under oath when he said that the information used to discover it was a homicide had been at his office for months, but it was dated just 6 days prior to this day in court. He also had misused the photograph film by reversing it to make it fit with the theory that he was trying to push. When he was questioned...
And is he in jail now for
No,
all of this
no. When he was questioned about it later, he admitted to doing something wrong and blamed it on not understanding English well enough to tell the truth about this case because he was an Egyptian immigrant. He said he didn't understand the question. In another case, a young girl had died after her neck was broken at a party. Dr. Malik said that it was accidental because she had fallen off the porch. But the porch was only a couple inches from the ground, not high enough for anyone to break their neck from the fall. The parents believe that the girl was beaten and that Malik was paid off to protect the killer. Sounds like he was paid off by a lot of fucking people so far. Another separate case by Dr. Malik was that of a man who was decapitated. Malik ruled that this death was due to natural causes and that the man's dog was responsible for the decapitation after the dog began eating the man when the man died, even though the cut was a clean cut.
And dogs will just eat whatever they can. Animals will just eat whatever they can. They're not going for one subject body part.
They're not going to go for the neck.
They're not like, I'm just going to eat your whole arm. I'm just going to eat your whole arm. Like, they're going to pick at whatever parts of you.
Yeah. With all of the bad press coming to light, including Kevin and Don's ruling being overturned, Clinton and his chief of staff decided to hire 2 out-of-state pathologists to review Dr. Malik and his place of business. But then, later, the chief of staff said publicly that they weren't hired to look into individual cases, and Clinton told the press himself that they could examine Dr. Malik's work without digging into his opinion about each case. I'm sorry, but isn't that kind of all he does? Isn't his work just about giving his opinion? Like, what the fuck?
It's literally his job description, and they're like, no, it's not what we do.
Yeah. So after these
You watched that? Okay, that's good. Missed my mouth completely.
So after those pathologists did the review of Dr. Malik's work, Clinton and the Medical Examiners Commission had decided to raise Dr. Malik's salary by $14,000 after finding him to be a diligent, dedicated, and capable forensic pathologist.
And somebody that can be bought off with $14,000, apparently.
Clinton said because he had a lot of supporters and he did a good job. How can he not see that this man was doing things wrong? So maybe Clinton just didn't want to see what this man was doing wrong, because as it turned out, Dr. Malik had helped out Bill Clinton's mother in the past. Virginia Dwyer Kelly was a nurse anesthesiast in the late 1970s. She was a lazy nurse, and she often didn't do her job right. Many people have died in the operating room where Virginia was administering anesthesia. Many people have died in the operating room where Virginia was administering anesthesia, but it was always easily considered to be because these people already had other health problems or injuries. Towards the end of her career, a young new mother died after being given anesthesia, and her husband decided to sue Virginia. While she was going through this court case for months, another patient of hers died. On June 27, 1981, Susan Deere was out dancing and drinking when a man who she had gotten into an argument with threw a large rock into her car's window, and it struck her in the face. She came into the hospital needing the bleeding stopped and some stitches, but not surgery. She wanted surgery, though. She wanted her face reconstructed, and after waiting for hours, the doctors decided they would give her the surgery. Virginia administered the anesthesia through a tube in her nose, and they began working on her mouth. Then it was time to work on her nose. Virginia pulled the tube from the nose and put it into the mouth, but vomit came up through the tube, indicating that the tube had been placed into the woman's stomach instead of her lungs. It was taken out and put back in, but within seconds, the woman went into cardiac arrest and died. Dr. Fahmy Malik did the autopsy in this case and ruled the death was due to a brain injury from the rock that was thrown at her, and it was considered a homicide.
Absolutely not medical malpractice, but sure.
The 22-year-old Billy Ray Washington was arrested and charged with negligent homicide for throwing the rock at her. It's fucking sketchy, right? Like, do you see this connection that Clinton has with Malik now?
Yeah.
Can you kind of maybe start to see, well, he might have something to do with the boys on the tracks? Well, it makes it hard not to look at Clinton for these things. But what makes it even harder is all the other people in his life who have also died in strange coincidental ways after he became president. So, you thought we were done with the bodies? We're not. There's so many more bodies still. Here we go.
Let the bodies hit the floor.
That is the song for this episode.
Is it? Did you already have that picked, or did I do that?
No, you just did that. You just did that. Okay. So Vince Foster reportedly committed suicide by shooting himself in the mouth on July 20th, 1993 in Fort Mercy Park, right outside of Washington, D.C., on his lunch break. He was stressed and worried about the White House Travel Office controversy, aka Travelgate, which was an ethics case that occurred during the time Clinton was president. The story goes that Clinton fired a bunch of people that were in charge of the White House Travel Office for financial errors, quote unquote, and then he hired new people into this position who were all coincidentally friends of his. The people fired took this up with the FBI. Vince Foster was Clinton's deputy White House counsel. He did have a history of depression, and he went to see a mental health doctor the day before his death to get a prescription for antidepressants. So here's where the weird coincidences come in. Vince Foster's body was found in the park that was across the street from the Saudi embassy, where 5 armed security guards are posted. There were also 2 other people at the park the same day, at the same time that it is reported that Vince shot himself. None of the 5 security guards, nor the 2 park goers, heard any gunshot. According to the report, no one heard because of traffic noise. So this is going to be a whole bunch
get
of...
the fuck out of here. No.
Yeah, this is going to be a whole bunch of debunking like they did in the Cecil Hotel. So, Vince's body was found by a witness who called it into emergency services. He said when he found Vince, there was no gun in his hand, and a report said he just didn't see it. And his palms were facing up. His head was facing up. He was laying very straight as if he was dragged to that location, and there was not, like, any blood on the scene.
Because when we kill ourselves, we're very much capable of
laying completely flat and somehow sucking in all your blood. Like, a gunshot wound to the head from the mouth would produce a ridiculous amount of blood. Is that not
what you do on your lunch break, Sierra?
There were also...
Like this poor man.
I know.
No.
There were also leaves and grass around that body that looked like someone had been walking near or standing over the body. The EMS also noted that it was weird that Vince's body was in a very straight position. The police took pictures when they eventually arrived at the scene, and in the pictures, the palms of Vince's hands were face down, and there was a gun in his hand now. And his head was resting on his shoulder. The police ruled it as a suicide at first sight, no investigation in a homicide. The autopsy was done by a man named Dr. Jones Beyer, who confirmed it was a suicide. The same doctor...
Damn dirty cops and coroners.
Seriously. I told you, I'm against coroners now. The same doctor had ruled 2 other deaths in 3 years prior as suicides that were both overturned upon a second autopsy and ruled as homicides. So, like, obviously, he already sucks. In the autopsy, Dr. James Beyer said that his x-ray machine was down, so there was no way to know if the bullet or fragments of it was still located in Vince's skull. Obviously,
your x-ray machine is down. That's what we're going with. All right.
So obviously, if the bullet was in the skull, it would help them prove if the gun found was the gun used. The police report, however, said that the x-ray was done and there was no bullet. So, since there was no bullet, they decided to conduct a search with a metal detector of the area, to see if they could find it at the park. No bullets were found. Not a single one. 9 months after the death, another metal detector search of that same area was done by the FBI. And 12 bullets were found, along with a bunch of Civil War mini balls. None of it was connected to Vince's case, but why weren't these things found when the police initially
allegedly did their...
Right.
Yeah. What are mini balls?
Like cannonballs, kind of, but small.
Okay. But tiny?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Just curious. I'm like,
yeah.
and why are they at a park?
Civil
I have
War.
further questions. Yeah, true.
Finally, there was no dirt or grass on Vince's clothes or shoes after having supposedly walked over 200 yards to get to that spot in the park from his office. There were no fingerprints on the gun. The forensic expert claimed that they must have melted off in the sun, even though he was shaded by trees. Also, I didn't
That's
know
also not how the sun works.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not a forensic pathologist.
I almost threw my bowl of chips on the floor. I was so upset about that.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
There were also no fingerprints on what they called his suicide note. It said, "I made mistakes from ignorance, inexperience, and overwork. I did not knowingly violate any law or standard of conduct. No one in the White House, to my knowledge, violated any law or standard of conduct, including any action in the travel office. There was no intent to benefit..."
What kind of suicide note is this? It sounds like a resignation letter.
Well, they said it was also a resignation letter.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, convenient.
There was no intent to benefit any individual or specific group. The FBI lied in their report to the AG. The press is covering up illegal benefits they received from the travel staff. The GOP has lied and misrepresented its knowledge and role and covered up a prior investigation. The usher's office plotted to have excessive costs incurred, taking advantage of COCKY and HRC. Those are abbreviations for something I don't know. The public will never believe the innocence of the Clintons and their loyal staff. The Wall Street Journal editors lie without consequence. I was not meant for the job or the spotlight of public life in Washington. Here, ruining people is considered sport. And
is Wall Street in Washington?
Yes. No.
Like the District of Columbia, DC, or like?
Yeah. It's either in, I think it's in Washington, D.C., yeah. Maybe New York.
Because that's not an actual state. Okay. I was today years old when I learned where Wall Street is.
Well, I'm going to tell you that I don't know if that's true. It might be in New York. I'm
going to Google it.
It's definitely not in Washington State. It's somewhere over here on the east.
Well, I didn't even know that Washington, D.C. wasn't a real state until I started working at my current job. And then I learned that it's a district.
Yeah.
It's a little, and I'm like, wait, what? This isn't, it's just a circle in this one
capital
spot?
of America.
Makes sense. It's in New York.
I thought so.
You are correct, my friend. 11 Wall Street Boulevard, New York, New York.
Yeah, but Wall Street Journal is just
New
like
York.
the, journal, the newspaper. So, to me, this resignation letter / suicide note that had none of the writer's fingerprints on it. Sounds like someone wrote it to cover their own ass. So it questions me why it said, "The public will never believe the innocence of the Clintons and their loyal staff." Like,
And
who would
also,
write that
if
in the
I'm in
suicide
that
note?
mental of a yeah, if you're in mental turmoil, you're not giving a shit about somebody else's family.
Yeah, no. So 3 hours after the discovery of Vince's body, President Clinton, his chief counsel, and Hillary Clinton's chief of staff, all entered Vince Foster's office and took out files when it was supposed to be closed. The police saw and didn't say anything. The files have never been found. All of these strange coincidences were brought up to the House of Representatives by U.S. Representative Danny Lee Burton and is on congressional record. So this is not like fake news. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people like to say anything about Clinton is fake news. This is not fake news, I promise. Although the representative who brought it up is a Republican, the only dirt I could dig up on him is that he had a child with a woman who he did not marry when he was young and single. He told his wife about that child, and he pays child support for that child. So not all Republicans are bad. All right, there's more. There's another body. So Ed Wiley.
Oh, good. I've lost count.
I have to. I don't even know anymore. Ed Wiley, who worked for President Clinton and was involved with many of the Clinton fundraisers, also committed suicide by a gunshot to the head in the middle of the woods on November 29th, 1993. He was apparently in a lot of debt and owed some scary people a lot of money. However, on this same exact day, Ed's wife had gone to the White House, where she volunteered often, and asked President Clinton for a more permanent position making some money since her husband was so stressed out. She later tells that President Clinton forced himself on her with a kiss and fondling. There wasn't much information about the death of Ed Wiley because all of the information about that day focuses on the sexual assault scandal. But they were on the same exact day. The same day she was sexually assaulted by Clinton, her husband
was the
was
same day
found
her
dead.
husband was mysteriously dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another body.
And also, that's so wholesome, and I want to cry.
Yeah.
Just, can I make some more money, basically?
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, sure, let me show you how." Fuck you. Kathy Ferguson.
All wild speculation.
Oh, yeah. I don't know any of this, Mr. President Clinton, sir. I am just repeating what I saw on the internet.
And that is all we can do in this crazy world.
Kathy Ferguson was the ex-wife of Arkansas police officer named Danny Ferguson. Paula Jones claimed that Danny Ferguson gave her a ride to Bill Clinton's hotel room in the past, and that police officers often drove women to Clinton's hotel rooms. Paula Jones later sued Clinton for sexual harassment, and Kathy was supposed to be a witness for Paula and for the many other rides given by police officers. But Kathy committed suicide in her home on May 14th, 1994. Her bags were packed as if she planned on going somewhere, and the gunshot wound was on her left temple. Some sources even say it was actually behind her ear, and the gun was found in her right hand. Yeah, make it make sense. Make it make sense.
For our listeners that aren't watching us on YouTube, I'm trying to reenact this in my head, and
It's not working.
It's not adding up. No.
This Paula Jones.
I don't buy it, like, none of these deaths.
Oh, yeah. This Paula Jones, trial, she actually sued Clinton. This is one of the things that I believe, I don't remember if this was it, but this was one of the things that they based his impeachment off of. Even though he was impeached, technically he wasn't removed from office because you can be impeached by one house and not by, the Senate or whatever. It's a mess.
Mm-hmm. I know. I was really hoping Trump would have been out a lot sooner for you guys for that reason. But
yeah. So
alas, you have confusing rules.
We do have confusing rules. I don't understand. There were many more instances of deaths and murder cover-ups that had no findable sources, so I didn't include them. All of these, by the way, do have sources we will link. But it's probably not too hard to scrub the internet of the more obvious sounding cases. So, like, it wouldn't surprise me if the other ones were true and Clinton just paid a lot of money to get them disappeared. There were also a few that did have sources, but have also been quote-unquote solved, and the perpetrator was not Clinton. Like an intern of his who was allegedly going to come out about his alleged sexual harassment of her, but she and 2 other employees were murdered at her work around 9:15 p.m. in a robbery. The store closed at 8 p.m., so I don't know how the guy got in. And after he killed all 3 employees, he did not take any money from the store. But, as I said, this one was solved. Carl D. Cooper admitted to the robbery. There was also another allegedly suspicious robbery of Seth Rich, who was shot twice in the back, though nothing, not even the Rolex on his arm, was taken from him. Allegedly, he had compromising information about Hillary Clinton, and this happened in 2016 when she was running for president. Let's see. There are also claims of many other strange coincidences, like plane crashes, car crashes, heart attacks, all of people who allegedly had some relation to or dirt on the Clintons. And allegedly, 12 of the Clintons' past bodyguards are now dead. I don't know how many of these incidents Clinton is actually responsible for. It's possible he's responsible for none of them. All I know is that I am glad I don't know the man personally, because that's a very large number of people he's been associated with who are dead now.
Not good odds.
Not good odds. And that's my conspiracy theory. I actually saw this meme that said you have a better chance of being killed by the Clintons than by a shark. So, that's that. All of this is speculation and legend. But there are sources if you need them. What do you think?
Oh my god. You are right. The cover-up or the conspiracy behind all of this is the only thing that makes sense.
Right. I'm not saying that he did it. I'm just saying prove me wrong.
Yeah. It's not looking good, Mr. Clinton. However, we can't prove anything, and it seems like nobody else can either because everything's been brushed under the rug. So,
it's a mess.
This is a weird one.
I'm sorry.
And how it stretches to the people that it stretches from when it starts with these little boys is like...
Right. Like, it's just
crazy.
Going.
It's like, what's the bigger picture here? What is really going on? Why?
Yeah.
So, I don't like it. I'm thinking that certain people have something to do with all of these cover-ups.
Allegedly.
Who am I but we podcaster, but to speculate.
Yeah.
No,
yeah, this is
insane. And that is such a good case.
It's a touchy subject as a conspiracy. Yeah. But, like, again, prove me wrong. Please. Like, I'll feel better if you prove me wrong. So, you know what I mean? Like, if you can prove me wrong, I will feel more comfortable living tomorrow. So, please tell me that I'm wrong and show me some proof.
Such a specific request.
I'm scared now. Like, why
all of our listeners are like, I want Sierra to be comfortable living, but also,
yeah,
I don't think I can prove her wrong.
Yeah, it's a mess.
Hey, we know nothing. We are true crime podcasters. All we can tell you is what we have researched on the good old Google machine.
Yeah.
That is it.
Want to move to Canada? America has had some sketchy ass presidents. So,
very true.
That's that on that.
Very true. I will welcome you with open arms anytime.
Thanks.
You did a good job.
Thank you.
I have no reason but to believe that there's a lot of cover-ups happening here, so.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was not pretty for a lot of people. If anyone kept track of how many bodies that is, let us know. How many confirmed bodies? Confirmed. Don't count the ones
I will
at the end.
confirm once I'm done editing here, and I'll let you know.
Don't count the quote-unquote solved ones where other people did it, because I don't have enough sources of proof for those ones.
We'll make it into a draw. We'll be like, how many jelly beans are in this jar? How many murders did Sierra describe in one episode?
Well, on the page that I found, like the start of some of my... Okay, I'm going to be honest. On a conspiracy page, I didn't use it as a source. On a conspiracy page, they named, I think it was 54 people that the Clintons are responsible for being involved with their death. And there was actually a quote that said, coincidences can come in threes, but if it's 54, it's not a coincidence anymore, or something like that. But I used that list. I went through each and every single one to find sources backing it up, and those are the ones that I found that I covered today. So I didn't use any of them that I couldn't find sources for, but apparently there's 54 so far on that source. And the actual conspiracy is called Clinton Body Count. So yeah, that's that.
So again, we are speculating wildly. We will have another round of cases for you guys next week.
Yes, we will.
And just a reminder to rate, review, and subscribe.
Tell us what
if you
you
like
think.
the show.
You don't have to agree with us on everything. It's fine.
Tell us what you think. We want to know your theories. Yeah, no, we would love you to be like, what about this theory?
Tell me.
Make us think. That's our favorite thing to do. That's why we love a good theory. And if you have a listener story you want to send in, please do. We're not sure when the next volume will be, but we're going to collect those, and we're really excited. And we have lots of fun stuff for you guys each month. So by the time this is a thing, it will be April, which is crazy to us. But we've got lots of fun on Patreon if you want some extra twisted and uncorked content, which if you're at this episode, you've run out and you need more.
We have 2 full months of series recaps. We are starting a new one this month. We have bonus episodes.
Thank you so much for your support, and let us know what you think about these last 2 conspiracies. We want to know your thoughts. And in the meantime, stay safe, both COVID-wise and safe from any secret killers out there. Head on a swivel, guys.
And meditate to the aliens.
Meditate, yes, absolutely. And if you're not a Patreon, you won't know what that means.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So you got to go check that out. Meditate to communicate, guys. Good advice for all. And in the meantime,
keep it twisted.
Greetings. Welcome to Curious Nixons, where we lead you through the darkness.
We'll be discussing all things sinister and disturbing.
If you're interested in hearing about true crime, the paranormal, witchy, and downright weird stuff,
then you're in the right place. We'll see you on the other side.